This is the Enjoyer Podcast. I'm your host, James Dixon.
My name is James David Dixon, not Larry David. But I have to tell you, you need to curb your enthusiasm for the new Republican House majority. This is going to require a little bit of nuance. We have to start with the rundown of what's possible and what's not possible in this brave new world of Michigan's 103rd legislature. Here's the reality. Some of you might call it bad news. Gretchen Whitmer will not be arrested. She won't be removed from office. Republicans only control one of the two chambers in Lansing, the House. The sergeant of arms is not walking through that door. He won't pull Whitmer off the podium at the State of the State speech. That 100% won't happen because it 100% can't happen. Here's some more reality. You might call it good news. House Speaker Matt Hall has given the Oversight Committee subpoena power as it investigates weaponization of government under Whitmer, under AG Dana Nessel, election integrity issues under Secretary of State Jocelyn Benson. Little by little, the truth about the last 4 years will come out. Chances are you won't read it in the pages of the Detroit News or the Free Press. They've largely abandoned true and timely stories. It's more likely you'll read them in the Enjoyer or the Midwesterner or hear from lawmakers on this show or on Charlie LaDuff's No BS News Hour. In Michigan, truth is a blue lake. Following the truth to the sources that print it in 2025 is your challenge in 2025. It won't be the legacy media. It'll be the new kids on the block. Personally, I prefer news outlets that weren't captured. You might too. So as we print the truth, don't just read it. Don't just hear it. Share it. Tell people about it. Take on an active role in saving our state. Stevens T. Mason is not walking through that door. John Engler's maxed out. Rick Snyder's maxed out. We, the people, the current 10 million of Michigan, must save our state, or it won't be saved. It was a mental reset in November when Michigan Republicans and Trump won Michigan. There was 3 bad cycles in a row for Republicans. We had 2018, where you saw Whitmer, Nessel, and Benson all swept into office. You had 2020, where you had Trump lose and Gary Peters win a Senate race. Then you had 2022, the red wave that did not materialize. And all of this led Republican voters to give into a cynicism. They came to believe that every election was stolen, and that winning was impossible. Trump's victory and the flip of the Michigan House to Republican hands should have, in an ideal world, would have relieved concerns about election integrity. But as we sit here now with Trump about to be inaugurated, we have more questions than answers. In Ann Arbor, a Chinese national voted, his vote counted, and as of now, as far as we know, he still hasn't been removed from the voter rolls. Ruth Johnson, Secretary of State before Jocelyn Benson, said that in the last year of her administration, 2018, there was only 54 new registered voters with invalid Social Security numbers. Last year alone, under Benson, that number was 35,000. Same-day registration prevents anyone from verifying that someone is an American citizen and thus eligible to vote. Everything has been kept fuzzy and nebulous, just the way Benson likes it. Republicans prefer secure elections, and one of them, Rep. Bryan Posthumus, has taken the lead. Posthumus has put election integrity front and center in the 2026 ultimate battle for Michigan. He's offering up a constitutional amendment that requires proof of citizenship before someone can be registered to vote. And get this, guys, proof of identity to cast a ballot. Right now, Michigan's voter ID law has such a big loophole that we might as well not have a voter ID law. If you're willing to do the time for election fraud in Michigan, you can do the crime. No one's going to stop you. Our systems don't stop you. And our systems don't want to stop you. With same-day registration, come one, come all. Do what thou wilt, and unless you self-report like that guy did in Ann Arbor, you'll never be caught. And so Posthumus has offered a deal to his colleagues, including the Democrats who control the Senate. Either we work together on this amendment, or I take this amendment to the people, to the 10 million of Michigan. Bryan, welcome to the Enjoyer Podcast. Thank you for taking the time.
Thank you for having me on. I truly appreciate your show and enjoy listening to you.
Thank you. Other than the podcast, other than talking to myself, what do you enjoy about Michigan, Bryan?
Oh, Michigan, gosh, what I'll say, number one, we get all 4 seasons here. I love the winter because I love to snowboard and I love to ski. My family enjoys going skiing when we can. I love the summer because, why wouldn't you love summer in Michigan? I love the fall because we have all the trees with all the beautiful leaves. Spring, there's no place better than a late spring in Michigan. And so when it comes down to that, I was born and raised here, and there's no state that I'd rather live.
I'm actually a spring truther. I'm working on some research for this. I actually don't believe there is a such thing. If you look at it, most years, winter basically will drag its butt until, what do they say about March, the year I was born? Comes in like a lion, leaves like a lamb. Well, sometimes the lamb doesn't ever arrive. And so it'll be until mid-April sometimes when it's cold. And then one day you wake up and it's 70. It was never just, it was never spring. Spring never happened. I'm a spring truther. I want to revisit this with you and find out whether there was a spring 2025.
We'll see. We'll see. Hopefully there is.
Bryan, help people understand this, because I hear a lot of the cynicism. All I did was repost the story the other day from the Midwesterner. Hey, Matt Hall has this investigative power. He's going to empower some committees. There's going to be some investigations. And I met with two things immediately. One is, so when can I expect Whitmer to be arrested? And people are always just like people think that Matt Hall is guilty of treason because Whitmer hasn't been arrested yet. And so that you're just way out of whack with what's possible. And then I have the cynics who say, well, nothing ever happens. What does it matter? If these House Republicans are like the last batch of House Republicans, does it really matter? Help people understand and put in perspective, what can the Republican House majority do? What can't it do?
That's a great question. And let me start by saying the Republican Party that the elected Republicans that we've seen in the last 10, 15, 20 years, we're in a whole different ballgame now. We have Republicans in the House of Representatives and I believe in the Senate as well that truly want to make a difference and make some changes. Whoever thought that Matt Maddock would be a vice chair of Appropriations Committee, right? Like, if that doesn't send a message, I don't know what does. There's never been a time, at least in modern history that I know of, that a standing subpoena power has been granted to a committee. Yes, committees have been able to do subpoenas, but it was individual one-off basis. It's never been done where it's just a standing issued, you have subpoena power. And that's the case today. That is a message. We are going to hold the government accountable, and we are going to stop the government from handing out unprecedented amounts of corporate subsidies, corporate welfare.
Yes.
So it's different. It's different. So what power do we have? What power does the House of Representatives have? So the Oversight Committee has been given subpoena power. What does that mean? No, we can't haul off and arrest Governor Whitmer. That's not what we are looking to do. We are looking to utilize the power of a co-equal branch of government to hold the government accountable. We can use the subpoena power as an investigative tool from a standpoint of making people testify before the committee, of research, forcing them to turn over documents, things of that nature. And so when it comes to areas of the government like those that hand out corporate welfare, we're going to hold it accountable. When it comes to the weaponization of the Attorney General's office, we're going to hold them accountable. Or the Secretary of State, we're going to hold them accountable.
What is a House Majority Leader? People hear these titles and they mean quite a bit in Lansing. The average person has no clue what any of it means. Don't we already have a House Speaker? Why do we need a House Majority Leader?
Yep.
What is it? What does that mean?
That's a great question. So, first of all, so you have the Speaker of the House. The Speaker of the House is in charge of the House of Representatives. They are the CEO, so to speak. They develop they develop the overall strategy, everything like that. They are the 50,000 foot. They are the vision. If you're looking at it from a corporate structure standpoint, I look at the floor leader, the majority floor leader dynamic as similar to the president, right? The president of a company.
Right.
They are doing the tactics and strategies and implementing the vision of the Speaker of the House, or in this example, the CEO. And so the floor leader's responsibility is to help manage the legislative strategy, help work with the Speaker of the House to develop and then manage and implement the legislative strategy throughout the upcoming 2 years. And it's also to manage the floor, the House floor. So organizing and managing the speaking of like whoever's going to be speaking on any issues, making sure that decorum is followed on the House of Representatives, helping to set the rules and guidelines for what can and can't be done on the House floor. So that's kind of the way that I look at it, and historically the role of majority floor leader.
Absolutely. Bryan, when you saw that the Chinese voter voted in Ann Arbor and the vote counted, what was your reaction? I mean, some citizen in Michigan, their vote was canceled out by the one illegal vote. I heard from Benson's office that my vote will count, that it was not the one canceled out, but I can't say that for everyone, and that's a
It might have
tragedy to
been.
me. It might, right? So what did you think when you saw that?
I was completely and utterly floored, but also not surprised. Right, I've spent the last 2 years in the House of Representatives watching the Democrat trifecta chip away at any safeguards that we had to protect our elections. Look, my view has always been that it should be easy to vote and impossible to cheat. That's how I feel our election system should be set up.
Yeah.
And the Democrats stop at it should be easy to vote. Like their framing
Right.
is it should be easy to vote. Okay, well, yeah, I agree with that part, but we still have to protect the vote. We still have to protect the integrity of our election systems. And so over the last 2 years, they were chipping away at the fundamental structures that protect our elections. One of them being the ability to find a ballot that was cast. And so, of course, when this guy found that loophole, voted in our election as a he was legal, but as a foreign national, voted illegally in our elections, the ballot counted because we couldn't find it. You can't just randomly pick a ballot out of the millions that were cast and say, all right, we're going to throw that one out and call it good. And so I was flabbergasted, I was floored, but I wasn't surprised. A foreign national voted in our elections, that ballot counted, and we need to put in place the guardrails to prevent that from happening. Right? Like we need to. And what's frustrating about this is everybody, you always hear that what the amendment that I'm putting forward isn't needed because you already have to be a citizen and you already have to show ID.
Oh,
Well,
yeah.
neither of those
Oh,
two
yeah.
things are true. Neither of those two things are true as much as the Democrats want to say they are. It's not true. So
If you're willing to take the
yeah.
penalty, you can do it. And what
Yeah.
scares me about that story, I never liked that story from the beginning because, it's like they said in the news business a few years ago, if you report on a suicide, you don't want to highlight the method because you don't want to draw copycats. But in this story, we heard about a Chinese national who voted. And then they tell you the only reason any of us know that this happened, including Ann Arbor election officials, including Jocelyn Benson, is because, like a pickup game at LA Fitness, the guy said, "Oh, foul on me." To me, that actually is worse because and so the news media, they're stupid. They're counting on the reader to be stupid. And so they say the guy was caught. That means the system works. He wasn't caught, though. He turned himself in, which means the system doesn't necessarily work.
Right. And to your point, I would go as far as to say you don't even have to be willing to suffer the punishment, right?
Yeah.
Because there's no way to know. There is no mechanism to know. There's a loophole in our system that allows you to register to vote without demonstrating that you are a citizen of the United States, and then cast your ballot, and nobody will know.
Mm-hmm.
And so until that loophole is fixed and that loophole is filled, we will continue to have problems. And when I first announced this, interestingly enough, so far, 0 elected Democrats have come out opposed to what I'm doing, which was a little bit surprising to me, but also I'm excited about that, and a little not surprising because 83% of the population believes that only U.S. citizens should vote in our elections.
Right.
But what the Secretary of State did say is that there's no proof that this happens, that this is a widespread issue. Frankly, there's no proof that it isn't a widespread issue because there's no way of knowing. And so that's one of my arguments against that. But the other piece of it too is, even if it hasn't been a widespread issue, it wasn't widespread because not everybody knew that this loophole existed. Now everybody knows that this loophole exists. And so we should probably expect that it's going to be exploited if it's not addressed and if it's not fixed.
That's the thing. I mean, for all we know, Xi Jinping personally sent that guy here so that people in a swing state would know or would think you can't really trust the election results you're going to hear.
Right.
Yeah. Because if this is the one you know about, there could be 10,000 others. There could be 1 million others. Mm-hmm. How could anyone tell me that there's not?
Right. Right. And frankly, we don't know why he chose to vote in our election and then come forward. Maybe it was a legitimate mistake. He didn't realize that he couldn't vote in our election. And then when he found out,
just stumbled off the boat into a voting booth.
Yeah.
And just, oh my God, I couldn't, I just got swept away in the enthusiasm.
Yep, maybe that is the case. That very well could be. But it also could have been a Chinese psyop in our elections for the purpose of sowing discord in our elections. We don't know. And I'm not spreading that. I'm not saying that. I don't know that to be the case.
I wish I could disconfirm it. I wish that was hyperbole. I wish we could sit here right now and say, oh, that's probably not what happened. That's a gateway pundit. No, we don't know. So Bryan, tell me about your plan. Tell me about your plan and how it's going to bring integrity to our system. And as I kind of read between the lines of it, I see some strategery, as George Bush might say, where, hey, I'm giving you guys my Democrat colleagues, I'm giving you guys a chance to come to the table. However, if you do not, we're still going to do it. And we have you on record of not coming to the table with something that's going to end up passing and be popular. Am I reading that right?
So you are reading that right. You are reading that right. My view has always been the things that you do should be done with specific intent, and they should be done with a purpose. And so, when I saw, I've been frustrated over the last 2 years with the progress of the Democrats stripping away the guardrails and the protections in our elections. And not to mention that, but my first term, so 2021 and 2022, Republicans in the legislature put forward, I don't remember the exact number of bills, but I think it was somewhere around the number of 50 different bills to help further secure our elections. And the governor vetoed pretty much all of them, if not all of them. And then we go through another 2 years of then the Democrats further chipping away the security of our elections. And then we see a foreign national vote in our election, and that ballot counts. And so I'm like, all right, enough is enough. Yeah. And so I decided to put together a constitutional amendment that would amend our Constitution in a manner that would require proof of citizenship when registering to vote, and also require verification of identity when casting your ballot. So at the ballot box, that means photo ID. When casting an absentee ballot, that means putting in the last four of your social security number or driver's license number or voter ID. There's a few different methods, but either way, you have to verify your identity when you cast your ballot, whether it's on election day or at the ballot box or casting your absentee ballot. And so the amendment does two things: requires proof of citizenship and requires verification of identity when you cast your ballot. Both of those measures are supported by almost 85% of the population. They have strong majority support by Democrats, not necessarily Democratic elected officials, but Democrat voters. Strong majority support by independents, strong majority support by Republicans, and pretty much, and I think strong majority support in every demographic, race, creed, color. And so, it's just common sense. Everybody believes, well, the vast majority of the population believes that only U.S. citizens should vote in our elections.
When the police kind of hang out in the shadows, they try to trick you, they're almost wanting you to speed so they can catch you. But when the police, stand in the median and in a marked vehicle, they would rather you slow down than speed and be caught speeding. Which one are you hoping the Democrats do? Are you hoping that this comes to the people, or would you be pleasantly surprised? Is it your legitimate hope that the Democrats join you in this, or do you know that this is going to end up with the people?
Well, so just to be clear, no matter what, in order to amend the Constitution of the United States, it has to go to the people as a referendum. So even if there's two different ways. It has to go to the ballot.
Mm-hmm.
There's two ways to put it on the ballot. One way is for the legislature to put it on the ballot. That requires a 2/3 majority in both the House and the Senate to pass it. If that happens, then it goes on the ballot. If we can't do that, if the legislature fails to act on this, then it requires a citizen-led petition drive.
Yes.
And then if we get the signatures that you need, then it goes on the ballot. So this is the way that I look at it. My hope is that the legislature will put it on the ballot. Look, this is a problem of the Democrats making. And I genuinely believe that the Democrats didn't purposely build this loophole to allow foreigners to vote in our elections. I genuinely believe that. And as a result, it's my belief that the Democrats will join us and say, okay, let's fix this problem that we created and put this on the ballot for the voters to vote on, because 85% of the population agrees with it. And so that's my genuine belief. Although I'm not naive enough to believe that there isn't the politics at play and the higher ups and everything, and that. So I wouldn't be surprised if we can't get it through the legislative process.
Your colleague in the Senate, Ruth Johnson, she sounded the alarm. The 35,000 new registrations with faulty, and this isn't a faulty 9-digit social. Anyone could kick a number on that, right? This is a faulty 4-digit social. How did Michigan get to this place? Was this Jocelyn Benson acting administratively? Was this the people voting on things that were maybe misrepresented? Was this lawmakers? How did we get here?
There's a combination of a lot of things. Like number one, you had the elections proposal that the Democrats put forward. Gosh, in 2018, I think that gave us same day registration and the absentee situation. That is what also brought in that you don't need an ID to vote. Prior to that, you needed an ID to vote. And so, when they ran that ballot campaign, they were campaigning on popular issues. So same day registration, like it or not, it is popular. Same day registration is early voting, like it or not, that is a popular thing.
Yeah, that's not going anywhere.
They were right. And those two things aren't going anywhere. And so they were campaigning on those two things, and then snuck in the fact that we're also going to add into the Constitution that you don't need an ID to vote. And so it was a little bit of pulling the wool over people's eyes, and then a little bit of like error, the loophole that was created that allows somebody to register to vote without demonstrating that they are a citizen. I believe that was an error. I genuinely believe that was a mistake. That was an error. It was just missed. And so you couple that with the last 2 years of the Democrat trifecta kind of chipping away at some of the guardrails that we have up, it created this problem. And then you also couple that with an activist Secretary of State that has a very loose, to be generous, a very loose interpretation of the law. and what she should and shouldn't be doing. And so that's why she got slapped down by the Supreme Court multiple times. And, so you couple all those things together and it puts us in the place that we're at today. Now, mind you, one thing that I would be remiss if I didn't mention is we have a lot of local clerks, like county and township clerks around the state of Michigan, that are phenomenal at their job, that do their utmost to protect the integrity of the election and do a phenomenal job of that. This is not about them. They do a phenomenal job, and I trust them implicitly. My sister is a county clerk. I think she's the best county clerk in the state of Michigan. Not biased at all, but I know she does everything within her power to ensure that the elections are secure and safe and fair and free and open. And so my job here, what I'm trying to do is just ensure that we put the guardrails up that we need to put up as well to help them do their jobs just a little bit better, like requiring proof of citizenship, like requiring identification verification.
Bryan, we're the same age, but I grew up the son of a preacher and a teacher and a manager at AT&T, Ameritech, Michigan Bell. You grew up the son of a Lieutenant Governor, Dick Posthumus. What is that like as a kid? Let me hop into your childhood a little bit. 40, same age, but I'm growing up the son of a Lieutenant Governor. What is that like?
What's interesting about it, and this is something that people that don't know me really, really well don't like. They look at it, they see it as I'm the son of the former lieutenant governor, former candidate for governor. People that know me really well and how I view it myself is I'm the son of a farmer, right? I'm the grandson of a farmer. I'm a farmer, right? Yeah. And so my dad was also, because my dad always viewed himself as a farmer before a politician, he was very grounded, and I was very grounded in my upbringing. And so you hear all these people talk about how politicians are slimy and skeezy and everything, and I'm looking at my dad, I'm like, this guy's the salt of the earth, smartest guy I've ever met on the planet, and just would give the shirt off his back to a stranger in need. And I'm like, it didn't jive with me. I didn't understand what people were talking about because it wasn't what I saw, and it wasn't what I lived. And so I grew up with an interesting dichotomy, right? And that dichotomy is growing up as on a farm with a farmer who legitimately farmed. There's a lot of people in politics that say they're a farmer and they're just not.
Oh, right? Yeah. Our new U.S. Senator for Michigan. Yeah.
So it's like they claim this, but I mean, it's different when you say you come from a farm and then when I was growing up, my dad would wake up at 6 a.m. I'd be in the tractor with him plowing a field, and then we'd go in and eat breakfast, and then he'd leave and go to Lansing. And then he'd come home and he'd come home after work in Lansing. We'd have dinner, and then he'd be back out in the field until 10 o'clock at night. That's what I grew up with, and that's what I experienced. And so that's all I know.
Sounds like more of a farmer mentality than a lieutenant governor mentality.
Oh, absolutely. There's no question about that. Yeah. So now what I take from that is I have a farm, right? I'm a 5th generation farmer, and that's the work ethic that I have is that, all right, we got to work on the farm. We may be working 40 hours a week. We may be working 50 hours this week. It's during harvest. So we will probably put in 75, 80 hours at the farm this week, but I still have to go to Lansing and push the button and do the voting and do that. But it's just a different dynamic. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. What's it like as a lawmaker where people do know that other context, and I'm sure the name still carries? I mean, your dad, is not a stranger to the people in Lansing. What's that like?
So let me start about I'm going to answer this in 2 different questions. Question number 1, what's it like being a lawmaker? It's humbling. It's an honor. I get to walk into the state capitol every single day. Go to my office, go to the floor, the House floor. I get to be a part of history. I love history, and the weight and the gravity of that responsibility is not taken lightly by me.
Mm.
And so when I got elected, one of the things that I wanted to do is bring back the concept of statesmanship
Yeah.
and respect for the institution. And the people that are in the institution need to be worthy of that respect in order to bring respect back to the institution. And so I have a high regard for the institution of the legislature. And I want to be able to bring that back. I want people to feel like this, the people that came before us have shaped where we are today. And it's just such an honor to be there and to represent the 95,000 people that sent me there. And so that's what it's like being a lawmaker, outside of the fact that, you live under a microscope, you mess up once and all of a sudden, and now
Oh
everybody knows
yeah.
you messed up.
Oh
Right.
yeah.
And so that's never fun, but it is what it is. It's you sign up for that, and
This is
it
the
is
life
what it
we
is.
have chosen, right?
Yeah, yep. And then as far as the part of, what's it like growing up as a lawmaker with my dad being who my dad is, right? And so one thing that I'll say, everybody, when I first got elected, and actually when I was first running for office, it's kind of a double-edged sword, right? So the benefit was that nobody would turn down a meeting with me, right? Initially, and that's
Right.
actually a pretty big
Absolutely.
advantage. Nobody would turn down a meeting with me, purely out of respect for my dad.
Hmm.
And so that was a huge advantage. The problem, the other side of that coin is I had to work. I've had to work substantially harder than I would have otherwise, because I don't want anybody to ever be able to say, "Oh, the only reason why he got there is because his dad is who his dad is,"
Mm.
right? And so I work constantly in Lansing. I don't there since I got elected, there isn't a single office that has done more doors than my office. I think we did 75,000 doors this last election cycle to help make sure we brought back the majority.
Mm.
My first 2 years in office, we did over 25,000 doors in my district alone.
Brian, you grew up when the Michigan Republican Party was strong. I remember, the only time I can remember us ever having a 3-term governor, Engler, then we had Snyder for 2 terms. But in recent years, the Michigan Republican Party's fallen on some serious hard times. So you're a lawmaker, you're also pushing for a constitutional amendment. What do you need from a Michigan Republican Party chair?
That is a great question. I think there's two things that I would say. Number one, we need a Republican Party chair that can raise money. Uh, Good, bad, or indifferent, politics comes down to the ability to raise money, and that is the chief responsibility of the state party chair.
Right.
That's number one. Number two, actually, I'm going to give you three things. That's number one. Number two is a party chair that understands the political strategy behind winning elections. Somebody
Mm.
that has a track record of winning elections. And so what does that mean? The one of the problems that we faced in 22 when we were running the campaigns in 22 is all of the campaigns were disjointed. There wasn't a
Mm.
singular cohesive effort
Right.
that brought all of the campaigns together and made it a seamless, advantageous effort on behalf of everybody. In 2026, we have a scenario where we have the governor is up. We have an open seat for governor,
Oh
SOS,
yeah. Oh
AG,
yeah.
LG. We have a U.S. Senate race. The House is going to be up again, and the state Senate is going to be up again. The implications of that statewide is critical.
Oh
And
yeah.
so it not only statewide, but nationally too. And so if we can, so our party chair needs to understand the critical nature of raising money, but also being able to be that glue that brings all of those elections, all of those campaigns together and
Right.
coordinates effectively
Right.
where it's legal to coordinate, right? And so that's number two. And I think that piece of it is getting overlooked a lot. A lot of people are talking about having to raise money. Whether they can or not is another story. But they're all talking about how you need to be able to raise money.
Right.
I don't think anybody's really talking about that strategy. And then the third thing I would say is let the primary campaigns, let that sort out who the nominees are for each individual space, and don't have, because the party shouldn't be picking the winners and losers. And so that's, and we need to continue to expand the tent. I'm going to add a fourth thing. Started with two, we're going with four. And so the fourth thing is, there are a lot of Trump voters that are not Trump Republicans, right? They're not necessarily Republicans. They're just Trump
They
voters.
just like Trump. Yes.
Yep. And now they are, I would argue they are conservative, and they should be Republicans. And so we need a party chair who understands how and is willing to make the effort to bring those Trump voters into the party and into the fold.
Absolutely. These last two presidential elections, I think about 2020, I believe it was, days, at least a day. Then in 2024, before the election day even hits, Jocelyn Benson saying, hey, it'll take 24 hours. So we've seen Michigan slow walk election results. And what I saw from Jocelyn Benson, when I looked in her eyes, when I saw her on CNN, when I saw David Marinus of the Washington Post following her around for days on end, I saw someone who liked that limelight a little too much. And so maybe our election results came slower than they needed to, because that means more interviews. That means more. If Trump had not been decided that night, how long does this thing drag on? And so I think we've all come to realize in Michigan, Secretary of State matters more than we ever knew. Apropos of nothing, what are your plans for 2026?
As far as I guess I'm not sure what you're asking. What are my plans?
Are you going to run for Secretary of State? Are you going to run for Secretary of State in 2026? It's a big job.
I honestly haven't really been considering Secretary of State at all. I mean, we'll see what happens down the road. That's not a position I've ever actually looked at running for.
Because when you start being identified as the election integrity guy, people might get ideas.
Well, I can tell you that the purpose was not to position myself to run for Secretary of State. It just wasn't. That is, you hear politicians equivocate all the time and say things like that, like, we'll see, no,
right,
and then all of a sudden they are. That's not what I'm doing. And that's not this. Like, it's never going to be a scenario where I mean, look. I did not do this to position for Secretary of State. That's never been on my mind. I'm not looking at that, but I also never say never. I did this for two reasons. Reason number one, it's the right thing to do. And reason number two, I feel pretty confident that it's going to bode well for Republicans on the ballot in 2026 if this is also on the ballot. Those are the reasons behind it. It's way too early to be talking about, what my plans are for 2026. I just got back in the majority. I just got majority floor leader. I want to figure out how I can be effective in the legislature here for a little bit.
Try to have some fun with that, because I'm sure these last 2 years, I mean, Republicans, by the end, I think people were kind of sick of Republicans working so well with Whitmer that they were like, in 2022, hell with it. Just let Democrats actually run the state. Big mistake.
Yeah.
Big mistake.
Yep.
What has that been like? And you talk about lame duck. We actually saw both chambers unravel. We saw it get to a point where House Speaker Joe Tate was a no-show on the last session day. What the hell was with the Democrats last term?
So I want to start. You started out by talking about, people got sick of Republicans working with the governor. So they're like, all right, well, let's just let the Democrats do it. And that was a big mistake. Like, look, here's the deal. The most moderate Republican, or the most liberal Republican, however you want to say it, is far and away more conservative
not
than
even
the
close.
most conservative Democrat.
Right.
From top to bottom, left to right.
There's no,
so like
they don't even meet in the middle. There's a gap between them.
Yes, and so like I would argue that I'm one of the more conservative one of the more conservative philosophical members in our caucus. I have a high 90s rating with CPAC. I have a high 90s rating with Turning Point, and I legislate from the standpoint of taking I don't take a my way or the highway approach to legislating. I take the approach of we need to move the needle. Right. We need to everything we do. We need to be looking at how do we move the needle to the right. That's how I legislate. But I say all that to say, like, look, like we have to get away from fighting each other. We have to get away from fighting Republicans and start fighting Democrats. Focus on fighting Democrats and winning elections. That's what it comes down to. Because the most liberal member of the Republican Party in the state House of Representatives or in the state Senate is far more conservative than the most conservative Democrat. Yeah. And all that matters is when you have the gavel, when we gave the Democrats the gavel, we gave control to the far left progressive wing of the Democrat Party. So as a result of that, we have California style policies ushered in for 2 years. We have to stop doing that. So now let me get off my soapbox now. So what were the other parts of your question?
Why did the Democrats unravel so badly? This is what you would want if you gave your opponent all the power in the world, all the gavels. Your only hope is that they would do what the Democrats just did and be unable to get along with each other well enough to continue ruining our state. Up close, what's your read on what happened there?
So let me just start by saying, man, we are fortunate that they fell apart when they did and how they did. And
they could have done a lot more damage.
I'm sure you've seen all of the bills that they wanted to do that failed. I mean,
they
got maybe 10%. Yep.
It just
so
unconscionable.
There were a lot of terrible far left California style progressive policies that failed as a result of that. And look, this was a long time in the making, and it came down to a few different things. Number one, the Democrats hadn't served in majority. There was nobody in Lansing, nobody on staff, nobody in office that worked for the Democrats that had ever served in the majority, ever. So the last time the Democrats held the majority was 2006 to 2010, and there wasn't a single staffer that held them that continued from that era that continued to work. Wasn't a single legislator from that era that was there. So part of it was inexperience and lack of knowledge. Like good, bad, or indifferent, institutional knowledge is important when it comes to governing and when it comes to legislating.
You need to know what you can do before you start doing stuff.
Yep, and how to do it, and how to do it efficiently, and how to do it effectively. So that was a big part of it. Another part of it that was a challenge for them and to our benefit is, they had 12 to 15 like incoming freshmen primarily, but 12 to 15 people that were extremely far left. They make California progressives look like Republicans, man. Like there was 12 or 15 of them, and their view wasn't we need to move the needle to the left. Their view was my way or the highway. I want all of this, and I want it now. And so it was, and then you had 20 or so of the Democrats that are relatively moderate Democrats in today's standards, I'd say, that didn't want to have anything to do with any of the policies that those 12 to 15 did. And I would actually put the former Speaker Tate, into that more moderate category. Contrary to popular belief, he's actually not all that far left progressive. He had to lead the caucus the way that he did in order to placate the far left within his caucus.
Right.
And so they couldn't between the inexperience and the lack of ability to know how to do it, combined with this schism, this void between the moderates and the far left progressives. And as nice of a guy as former Speaker Tate was, he didn't know how to lead that group. And so you have a lack of leadership coupled with all of that, and you just get division, you get strife, and it all falls apart.
Yeah. We'll get you out of here on this one, Bryan. I know you're headed to the inauguration to celebrate a new
I
era.
am.
Your dad came up with John Engler in the era before term limits. I mean, when you look at
Yeah.
those old legislator biographies, 8, 10 terms. I mean, just people, you could really become a master of Lansing back then. And then he also served
Hmm.
under Rick Snyder more recently. So you, for a 40-year-old man, have quite a sweep of history that you have access to. You know what
Yeah.
Lansing used to be 30 years ago. You know what it is now. What would you say is the difference in the term limit era versus the old days?
So, well, we just changed term limits, right? So
Again, yeah.
we still have term limits, but we have changed them again.
Mhm.
So I'm hoping this will be a little bit more helpful. But when I'm hoping that change will be helpful, and this won't be as much of an issue. But what I've seen is like, look, historically, up until Speaker Hall, the Speaker of the House became Speaker after only having 4 years of political experience.
Right.
And so he's the leader of the chamber that is supposed to be the voice of the people. And he has 4 years of political experience.
Man.
And he has to go up against the Senate Majority Leader, who typically has 8 to 10, and a
Right.
governor who typically has 10 to 15, and staff and all of that. How do
Right.
you expect the voice of the people to be effective at all when you have that experience gap, right? Like so that's a big factor in it. And then you look at the standpoint of all right, so your first 2 years, you're a freshman. You have no idea how committees work. You have no idea how to actually run legislation. Your experience with running legislation is Schoolhouse Rock, right? It passes the House, it passes the Senate, the governor signs it into law, and you're
Right.
like, okay, so I'm going to introduce this bill, and I'm going to get this law signed.
Right.
There are a lot of things that Schoolhouse Rock left off, right? Like you actually have to work the bills. You have to work the
Oh,
committee. You have
man.
to work the House of Representatives. You have to work the
Right.
Senate committee. You have to work the Senate floor, and then you have to work the governor in order to get anything done. And what does that look like? How do you get stakeholder input? How do you navigate that process? You don't figure that out until you're 3 years in. Now you're 3 years in, and
Right.
so now you're like, okay, now I want to get these ideas in, and then you only have 2 years left, and so it's no wonder that nothing gets accomplished in the
Right.
legislature, because the House, the Speaker of the House never had any experience when they were leading the body, and you never learned how to do anything until you were on your way out. So my hope is that changes now that we've reformed term limits a little bit.
It changes in terms of what? Eliminating term limits?
Well, no, what I'm saying is that, now that we've changed term limits. So before you could only serve 6 years in the House,
Right.
and once you were done with the House, you could still serve 8 years in the Senate. But now you can serve 12
12
years
years in.
total in either
Yeah.
chamber,
Yeah.
right? So, and so my hope is that will allow the members of the House of Representatives to spend a little bit more time there to gain some knowledge, gain some experience, and then figure out how to do it. And you still have the
I
cap
see.
of 12 years. Oh, here's an interesting statistic for you that most people don't realize about term limits. Prior to the 1994, 1995, whenever term limits were created, it was mid-90s, 94,
92.
95, somewhere in there. Prior to that, okay, yeah. So prior to that, the average tenure of a legislator was less than the average tenure of a state senator after term limits.
How? That's incredible.
So yeah.
I
So
don't think
typically,
that's a
the
widely
average was somewhere
known.
around.
Yeah, that's not widely known, I imagine.
No, no,
And
no.
it
Yeah.
runs
So
counter to my expectations too.
yeah, yes. So the average tenure was, I think it was like 9.8 years or something like that. Well, the average tenure of a limits was, let's see, 6 plus 8 is 14. I think 13 years. That was the average tenure of an outgoing senator.
Wow.
Now you throw the House in there too, and it drops it down quite a bit. But either way, the people focus on the few people that stayed for 20 years, 30 years, that type of thing. That was actually relatively rare. It did happen. I mean, shoot, we had I think Frank Kelly was the attorney general for something like 40 years.
Right.
And, that there, so I'm not saying that that term limits wasn't needed. I'm not saying that there isn't problems with people staying there forever. What I'm saying is people focus on the ones that exacerbate it. It actually historically at the state level wasn't all that widespread, where you had a bunch of people staying for 20, 30, 40 years.
Absolutely. Bryan, where can people learn more about yourself and your plan?
I appreciate the ask on that. So what I will say, people can learn about me on all of the socials, right? I'm on Twitter. I have two. One of my Twitter handles is Bryan_Posthumus. I think that might be my personal one. The other one is Posthumus_Bryan. I can't keep it straight. Either way, they'll figure it out. So I'm on Twitter. I'm on Instagram. I'm on Facebook. So all of the socials. I'm on YouTube. So that's where you can find me. You can also go to my website, which is repposthumus.com. And then once this moves into it, in the event that this has to move into the petition phase, then we'll have a website on geared specifically for the effort to do a petition and that type of thing. Like I said, as of right now, my hope is that the legislature puts it on the ballot. So I have to stay away from the campaign side of things as I'm working the legislative process. But you can follow me on social media, and you'll get all the information.
Actually, one more quick one. At what point do you reach the threshold where you move away from the legislative strategy, realize that's not going to work, and time requires that you have to move to the, Yep.
That is a great question. So what I'm looking at doing, look, my hope is that we will vote this out of the House sometime in February. That's my hope. That's relatively ambitious because we don't even have committee sat yet. But that's my hope. And then we'll see what the Senate does. If they move quickly, then awesome. I do not expect Democrat Senate Majority Leader Winnie Brinks to put my constitutional amendment up for a vote, but maybe she does. Ultimately, though, sometime between middle of March and beginning of April is when we're going to be like, all right, it's not happening through the legislature. It's time to ramp up the petition drive, and from there we'll have 180 days to collect pretty much 500,000 signatures. And so we're going to need all the volunteers we can get. We're going to need all the help we can get, and it's going to be a very robust, very robust and very organized organization if and when it gets to that point.
Absolutely. Bryan, thank you for taking the time. Please have safe travels. Please come back safe. You got a lot of work to do when you get back.
I appreciate you for having.
And as this spring, as it hits that threshold and the strategy changes, let's revisit this.
Looking forward to it. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
All right. Thank you so much, Bryan. God bless.